A blessed evening to all. We will continue with our series entitled New, that talks about the things that God has given to us, new things, as we have started this year within this first month. If you still remember, during the first Sunday of the month, we talk about the new status that God has given to us. You and I, based on Romans chapter 5, were condemned individuals. We were hopeless people. And yet when God, through His grace, sent His Son Jesus, and He convicted us with His Holy Spirit to believe in Him, He has given us a new status by faith. And that new status that we receive from God, we are no longer condemned, but we are justified by faith. That new status that God gave to us brought us a new paradigm. We proceed in the 12th chapter of the book of Romans. We found in chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, where Paul said, "You present your bodies as living sacrifice. Do not be conformed to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Actually, that's the new paradigm of living. So we were not only given new status, we were no longer condemned, but we are justified. Along with that new status, God has given us a new paradigm in life. And that life that we live is dedicated to honor the God who saved us, the God who justified us. That's the commitment of every believer, to praise His name, to worship Him, to honor Him, not only during Sundays, but every aspect of our being, day by day, from Sunday to Sunday, we ought to praise and honor the name of God through our bodies and through our minds. And then last Sunday, Dr. Rosalita talked about a new paradigm as well of engaging with each other. And he differentiated between the community of believers and the community of the unbelievers. Because the community of believers would operate in a very different kind of way, because we base our operation within the grace of God. We respond to it through faith, and we operate and function according to our gifts. So we are really a different community if you contrast us with how the world operates. This evening we will be looking at this new paradigm of engagement that is a transformed character that is anchored on the very love that God has given to us. So we the believers of Christ, we operate in a very different sense because we operate within the system of love. But let me explain to you this evening, in a very specific manner, this kind of love that Paul is talking about when you look at Romans chapter 12, verses 9 to 21. So let's look at our Bibles, Romans 12, 9 to 21, and we'll read it from the NASB 1995 edition. The word of the Lord says, "Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor, not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, practicing hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And if he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." May the good Lord bless the reading of His Word. In the very first verse of what we are talking about, in verse 9, Paul immediately mentioned the word love. he introduced this section with this line saying, let love be without hypocrisy. Let love be without hypocrisy. Nowadays, we understand the word hypocrisy this way. When one person says one thing and he shows in his action a different thing. Example, there is one man who goes to his son and would tell him, son, do not smoke because smoking is going to affect badly your body, your lungs. So I advise you not to smoke, son, because it's going to affect your body. It's really bad. Don't do it, son. It's gonna cause a sickness with you. So please don't smoke. When a man does that, in a modern day of understanding about the word hypocrisy, that scenario falls within that category. When one person says something and he does another thing, that's hypocrisy. But when we look at the passage in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 9, it is mentioned there that let love be without hypocrisy within the community of believers. And if I look at this, the real understanding of the word hypocrisy within this context had to do with faking it. That one person, once he lives within the community of believers, he must or she must not fake love. Is it really possible for a person to fake love within the community? Yes, it is. It is possible for a person to go a group of people and he would try to blend in within that group and would say, hi, I love you, I like you, I'm fine here with you, I'm happy to be with you. And then at the back he would say another thing. He would say, actually I don't like this group. It is possible to go and talk with a person next to you during Sunday worship and you give a smile to the person and actually deep within you don't like it. It's possible to fake on how you express love because we don't know what happens deep within the heart and mind of a person. But that cannot happen before God because God sees everything and He knows everything in a person's mind and heart. So Paul is advising the believers, let love be without faking. Let love be without hypocrisy. In other words, if you say it in a positive sense, what Paul is saying here is, let love be genuine. Let love be genuine in the midst of the believers. And here is something that I have discovered this evening out of the text that we have read. A genuine love exemplifies this next line that he said. He said, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. A genuine love exemplifies this category that he mentioned. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. When we study the word abhor, it had to do with disliking, hating that what is evil. And evil here had to do with morally corrupt things. In other words, Paul is saying, when a person has a genuine love in his heart and mind, he abhors, he dislikes, he hates what is evil. He stays away from what is evil. If you bring this into the community of believers, a believer, a follower of Christ, must hate, must dislike, must stay away from what is morally corrupt. That's how it should be. One time I officiated a wedding. It was held in an open area. There was no roof. The wedding happened around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun was rising. Early that afternoon, it was good. But the night before the event, there was a heavy downfall of rain. So because there was a heavy downfall of rain, the ground was wet. Even if there was a sun shining early in the afternoon. And those people who went there experienced the problem. Because I look at the program, and the program says, you wear formal attire. So there were people who went there with all their gowns and the ladies wearing their 2 to 3 inches high heels. Anong mangyayari kung ang ground is wet and you wear a high heels? Murag lansang nga numero 5 ang high heels. Pag malubong, di na maibot. And they really had a hard time. And there was one lady who went out of her car with a very white dress, and she was about to cross that area because from the parking lot, there is a path that is also muddy going to the exact location for the wedding ceremony. She tried to pass that way, but she discovered that it was very wet, it was muddy, and so she found a way that turned her to the other side. It took her several minutes before she arrived that near place, the exact location for the wedding. But she chose the long cut. Why? Because she was avoiding the mud. So if you were that lady, that's the natural solution you would have. Even if you pass through the long cut, you would be willing to do that. Why? You are avoiding the mud. And that must be the behavior of the believers. If you have the love of God, if you have love in your heart, you abhor what is evil, you stay away what is morally corrupt, you hate it, we must dislike it. And in that same sense, we have to behave before the eyes of our God. Moving forward, it also says something like this: cling to what is good. So a genuine love must abhor what is evil, and it must cling to what is good. Let's understand the word cling. In some other passage, this word appeared in the book of Matthew. Matthew used this term when Jesus was conversing with some religious leaders. When did he use this term? Jesus used the word when he described about the relationship between a husband and a wife. The word cling, okay? The word cling. He used it there. Some translators use the word cleave, C-L-E-A-V-E, cleave, meaning to say to stay close, to stay attached, to hold on to embrace it, to stay together. You can see husbands and wives staying together during Sunday worship services. Well, that's natural. That's how it should be. A wife should stay beside her husband. A husband should stay beside her wife, his wife, I mean. Except only if they had a quarrel coming to church. Maybe the wife stays there and the husband stays on the other side. But that's unusual. What's usual is that they stay together. They slept together side by side during last night. They woke up in the morning, they ate the breakfast together, beside each other. They came here riding the car beside each other. They sit at the church beside each other. They are couples. That's part of living and cleaving, staying together, hanging on with each other, refusing to stay away from each other. And Paul used that term that Jesus used to talk about believers in relation to what is morally acceptable and morally good. So listen very carefully. A genuine love abhors, stays away, dislikes, hates what is morally corrupt. But it cleaves, it embraces, it stays, it holds on to what is morally acceptable and morally good. It abhors what is evil, it clings to what is good. That is genuine love. If you look at this passage, we are discussing verses 9 to 21. Okay? Well, this is one of the hardest unstructured verses that Paul wrote. Why did I say unstructured? Grammatically, usually when you read the writings of Paul, the grammar would help you identify the main points. But in this case, he had a lot of sentences, and this is how we understand it in the way I look at the text. With verse 9 as the beginning of the section, he mentioned about evil and good. And then with verse 21, at the closing part of the section, he also mentioned about evil and good. Okay? He mentioned evil and good in relation to a genuine love in verse 9. Thus, verses 10 up to verse 21 are all elaboration of what he meant by cling to what is good and abhors what is evil. Okay? Let's take note of that. So what Paul is trying to say in chapter 12, verses 9 to 21 is this. A genuine love must be there in the heart of every believer. And that genuine love is characterized by abhorring what is evil and clinging to what is good. Many of us, well, I see many very younger generation here. Maybe you were born late 90s or 2000 already. Well, it's already 2023. Maybe you were born 2010 already or 2009. But for those people who were born in the 80s and in the 90s, when the rod was the discipline that the parents would really hold on to, from time to time, yung mga batang 80s and 90s experience the spanking of the parents, the discipline of the rod. I believe you experienced that. I experienced that. In those days, as a naughty guy, I also had experienced several times. And I found it hard to reconcile when after they disciplined me. My parents, whenever they had a time to talk to me, they would say, you know, Dong, we did that to you because we love you. In my young mind, I cannot understand what they were talking about. Because I cannot reconcile disciplining me, reprimanding me from what I do, which makes me happy, to the love that they claim. Imo kong gibunalan, you would tell me, you love me? I cannot reconcile that. But when I look at that love that Paul is mentioning, when he said, love must be genuine, and this love that is genuine is exemplified by abhorring what is evil and clinging to what is good. When I bring this into the morality of a believer, it only tells us that genuine love has a moral responsibility. I'll repeat. A genuine love that is pertained to by Paul here has a moral responsibility. A believer's love has a moral responsibility. And that moral responsibility is exemplified in this line. It abhors what is evil. It clings to what is good. A parent would discipline a child, and they would say that we will do that because we love you. In other words, when they see something evil, something morally corrupt that a child, a son or a daughter will do, the parents will come in a form of an intervention so that they'll be able to rescue the child from a greater problem. Why? Because they have a genuine love for the son and the daughter. And that genuine love that they have has a moral responsibility that they think that the child must walk straightly in the eyes of God. There is a moral responsibility. And oftentimes today, when we say the words I love you, oftentimes we forget the moral responsibility of that love. What am I trying to say here is this. When we say I love you to a friend, all of us have friends here. So let me use this illustration to clarify something about what the text is saying. Because we all have friends. When your friend does something immoral, or he or she is engaging into something morally corrupt activity, and you know what's happening, if your love for him or her is genuine, you will take the risk of telling him or her about the moral problem that he or she has. I'll repeat. We all have friends, right? We all have friends, every one of us. Kahit nga ang dog, my friend, tayo pa kaya. We all have friends. When your friend is engaging into something immoral, if your love is genuine, it abhors what is evil, it clings to what is good, you'll take the risk of telling the person that what he or she does is evil and there must be a change in life if you have a genuine love. But many times, we are afraid to take the risk. Why? Because commonly, people don't accept a reprimand from a friend. In fact, people would love to be with others who just accepts and tolerates what they do, even if what they do is evil and corrupt. And this is what we fear about. Pastor, pasagdahin na lang na siya. Nga naman, ay, maawayan palang niya tao, giingnan na to na siya. Mangaway na. Unya, ang maingnan po ni mo, bro, murag di man maayo ay mong giingnan, basig maingnan pa kag, salamat ha, hilabtanon kayo ka. Mind your own business. But if you truly love your friend, that love, genuine love, bears a moral responsibility. It abhors what is evil. It clings to what is good. And thus, if your friend is going toward that direction, that immoral path, if you genuinely love the person, take the risk of telling him or her. Of course, when we reprimand a friend, make it lovely also. There is what we call in leadership, in our leadership class, our professor recommends this idea of kiss, kick, and kiss. He said, when you reprimand a person, apply this. Kiss, kick, and kiss. Kiss is something desirable. Kick is something we don't like. You apply it in reprimanding someone. Example, the person next to you is having a bad odor. You genuinely appreciate the person at the beginning. He said, you do it like this. Bro, I really like the way you dress. You look so handsome. Pero murag nakalimot ka roll-on, no? Pero ang hinapay ni mo, okay kayo. You kiss, you appreciated, you corrected, and now you kiss him again with an appreciation. So it becomes more acceptable. Kontra nang ingna ni mo, bro, baho yung kag ilok. It would be painful. But it would be better for you as a true friend if you genuinely love the person to say it to him rather than him being put to shame with the rest of the people around. Especially as Filipinos, we don't like to be direct. We don't like to be straightforward. We hide in the idea of, I'm afraid nga masuko siya sa ako. But if you genuinely love a friend, you better tell the person in a lovely manner. Because a genuine love bears a moral responsibility. On the other hand, if God sends someone to tell us about something corrupt or immorally wrong or morally wrong in our lives, let's not get mad of that person. Because reality is this. Oftentimes, we like to be with people who just tolerates even our wrongdoing. That's what we like. But do they really love us? Because a person who truly loves you will be willing to take the risk of telling you if there is something immoral in your life. He would be willing to take the risk of taking accountable of that moral responsibility that love bears in his heart and mind. So at the end of the day, when God sends someone to us to tell us, who's willing to give the comment, let's be willing to accept. That instead of being offended, let's thank God for this kind of people. Even in husbands and wives, we still find offended sometimes when our wife would reprimand us when we're doing something wrong. Our wife or our husband when they would say to us, we still are offended. But we have to manage our emotions because it is for our good. And that's real love. When our spouse would tell us, this is wrong, I want you to do what is right because I love you. That's a responsible love. So instead of getting offended with these things, in the community of believers, what Paul is actually saying is a real believer, follower of Christ, has a genuine love in his heart toward others. And that genuine love that a believer has a moral responsibility. And that moral responsibility is stated in that way. It abhors what is evil. It clings to what is good. Because after all, if I may summarize what I said from the very beginning of the sermon in a very short statement, it's like this. Real love loves what is good. I'll repeat. Real love loves what is good, what is morally acceptable in the eyes of God. So this evening, I am praying that we will begin evaluating ourselves. Am I a person who has a genuine love toward others? And at the same time, am I a person who is willfully accepting, opening my life to people that God sent to me? Those people who have genuine love for me, am I willing to accept what they would tell and reprimand about me? And I am praying that we will all open our hearts and minds for that, because it opens for spiritual growth in our walk with Christ. So I am looking forward for a better you in the coming days as we live our lives with genuine love deep within us, abhorring what is evil and clinging to what is good. With that, the Lord bless His word in our hearts, and may He continue to transform you and me.